Circle of Doom. Oh, fab.
Okay, it's 1 minute past 10, so I think we'll make a start. Brodar pawb, croeso, good morning everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to this The Best Start in Life webinar on speech, language and communication. So this webinar forms part of our developing community of practice for Best Start in Life in the Gwent region. And that includes a quarterly newsletter and these bi-monthly webinars. If you have any ideas for content for the newsletter or any topics that you'd like us to cover as part of these webinars, please do contact Nisha Basani, who I'm sure many of you will know. Nisha will pop her details just in the chat bar for anybody that wants to contribute to that. So we're really open to the community of practice and you that are working out there in the field, the specialists, the experts on Best Start in Life, really helping to shape how we go forward with this community of practice. So on to today's focus, which is speech, language and communication. And just by the way of introduction and setting a little bit of scene for this one, I'm sure many of you will be aware that last September, Welsh Government published a report, speech, language and communication needs for pandemic era babies and toddlers in Wales. This report was based on surveys and interviews of practitioners and the families of children aged 5 to 8. And it really highlighted some quite significant need with respect to where we are post-pandemic. 9 in 10 practitioners that were included within that sample reported to have seen an increase in complexity of speech, language and communication needs in recent years. And 2/3 of the practitioners included in that sample stated that have seen an increase in the number of children requiring support, and half report seeing changes in the type of speech, language and communication need now being presented. And in addition to that, around 1/3 of all parents reported that they held concerns about their children's speech, language and communication needs. And this is just one report of many, really, that's highlighting the changing need, the changing picture with respect to speech, language and communication, which is not unique to Gwent or to Wales, is what we're seeing across the UK. And that's why it will form a really important element of our Best Start in Life work in the region. So the work that we're doing to improve what we're doing in this space. So I'm now really, really pleased to hand you over to two specialists in speech, language and communication who are going to advise and inspire us this morning on what we need to be doing and where we need to be going with respect to that increasing needs that I've talked about there. So pleased to introduce to you Emily Hoskins, who is a speech language therapist working with the Health Visiting Service for Aneurin Bevan University Health Board. We're so fortunate to have her within the Health Board because her role is the Regional Strategic Lead for both universal and targeted speech, language and communication provision across Gwent. And her experience spans both specialist services and flying start roles within Gwent. And I'm sure Emily won't mind me saying that she's a Bevan exemplar for her work, her leadership on speech, language and communication. So we are so absolutely fortunate and blessed to have Emily working in this space. And supporting Emily today, really, really pleased to introduce to you Ellie Farrar, who's a speech language therapist who works for the Caerphilly and Torfaen early years teams, and she provides effective, universal and targeted speech, language and communication provision. And in Ellie's work, she's really ensuring that babies and children who need support are identified early, and that is so, so critical to this work, and that they receive the right support at the right time. So I'm not going to say too much more because I really want as much time as possible to go to the specialists in this space. We will have an opportunity for any questions and some discussion at the end, but we've got approximately 40 minutes now to hear from both Emily and Ellie. So handing the virtual mic over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Errol, and thanks for saving us our introductions. We'll just jump straight in because obviously you've introduced us there, which is so appreciated. Are my slides sharing okay, Ellie?
Not
They
yet.
are.
Yes, now they are. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so hopefully I've just popped on here the plan for the webinar, but you've all received this on email from signing up, so I'm not going to read through it all. But essentially, we're hoping to cover kind of why speech and language and communication development matters, some kind of research evidence about long-term impacts, and the kind of key messages that we want to be sharing with families, what support is available across Wales, and then we're going to touch on what's available in Gwent, but there's a lot to cover there, and it probably could take the whole webinar if we went into that in depth. So we'll touch on it later. We've got a couple of videos to watch to kind of try and bring that adult-child interaction to life and how we can use those key messages in practice. And then obviously we'll have questions at the end. But we're hoping for this to be really practical, really applicable to practice, kind of no matter how much you come in terms of knowledge with for speech and language. So it should be really kind of enable you to support any family that you have contact with to promote speech and language for their own child. So hopefully it'll have a real practical application. The first thing we thought we would do is just define speech, language and communication, because these terms tend to be used very interchangeably by professionals, families. You know, if you stop someone on the street and said, what is the difference between these terms, probably it would be really, really hard to separate them, but they are very, very different kind of areas of communication development. So speech is specifically about sounds, so how we say sounds and how those sounds go together to form words, and then kind of that would translate to how clear a child's speech is and how much you can understand them. Then language is about words and sentences, and it includes understanding of those words and sentences and then use of those words and sentences. And then communication is kind of even bigger, and it's how we use our kind of language skills to interact with somebody else. And understanding the difference between these can be really helpful for us to kind of be using consistent terminology with families. I'd say most of the time people say, I'm a bit worried about their speech, but what they actually mean is that child isn't talking as much as we'd expect, and that's kind of more actually related to language. So Ellie and I will be very consistent going through this morning. When we say speech, we mean sounds, and when we say language, we mean kind of understanding and use of words and sentences. And the other thing to just quickly let you know is that we will shorten it. So we will be saying SLC for speech, language and communication. And then SLCN is speech, language and communication needs. So we're just in the habit of kind of using those acronyms. So just for you to be aware, really. Okay. So we just thought we would start with a little bit of a litmus test at how much do we already know. So if you stop someone on the street and said to them, can you think of something that's the most common additional learning need in Wales and makes you twice as likely to experience periods of unemployment as an adult, what might they say? So just have a little think in your mind. I think I'd have some predictions as to what they might say, but how many people realistically might say SLC? Probably not as many as we'd like, because a lot of the time, the thing that we hear from people outside of the speech and language bubble is, you know, I didn't talk till I was 3, or I didn't talk till I was 4, and it's fine. So when they go to school, they'll catch up. And really that kind of long-term impact of having SLCN, so difficulties with communication as a child, are not really fully appreciated. And that's why we want to kind of raise this awareness and spread this message to everybody who's having contact with a child, because actually speech and language should not just be practiced or developed inside a clinic room with a speech and language therapist. It's something that can happen in all elements of a child's everyday life. Okay, so just to kind of follow that up then, hopefully this is going to work. Okay, I think it is. Just to give you some stats. So I might give us a couple of minutes just to put stuff in the chat to make it a little bit interactive. But for a percentage, how many % of children do you think have emotional and behavioural disorders also have speech, language and communication needs that have not been identified? So what in terms of a percentage, how many children with emotional and behavioural disorders have speech and language needs that haven't been identified? Is anyone brave enough to put a guess in the chat? So 32, 60, 80, massive range, 80. 70? 70? Fab. The answer is 81%. So, and if you want any of the references for these stats, by the way, they're kind of linked on an infographic on the slide. So when you have the slide, you can go away and read the research if you like. But all of these have been ratified by Welsh Government and published on the Talk With Me website. So they are robust enough for Welsh Government. In terms of care leavers then, what percentage do you think have speech and language needs that were not previously identified? So care leavers kind of being that 16 plus. How many maybe had speech and language needs as a child that were never picked up? Put them in the chat for me. 50, 80, 45, 50. So yeah, massive range. And the answer is 90. 90% of care leavers have speech and language needs that were never identified. Same thing then for the percentage of young people in youth justice estate having speech, language and communication needs. Should we have some guesses for that one in the chat? 99. That is a lot. That's a big number. It is less than 99. 45, 90, 92. Yeah, so 71. So slightly less on that one than some people would think, but has a massive, massive impact. We actually do have a dedicated team of 2 speech and language therapists working in the youth offending service for Gwent. And if you ever want a webinar of them, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to oblige, because it's an absolutely fascinating area and the work they do is incredible. I've attended some talks with them, and some of the statistics and information and case studies they can share are really hard hitting. Fab, I'm just going to go through the next. There's 2 left, only 2 left. So the one that I've mentioned on the previous slide is that children with a lower vocabulary score at 5 are twice as likely to experience periods of unemployment in adulthood. So by 5, your kind of vocabulary size, the bank of words that you understand and use, has been linked to kind of chance of being unemployed later, which is why we don't want to be saying, well, when they go to school, this will resolve, because actually we know that the early is the most critical time to kind of try and close that gap. Because actually by 5, it's much harder to kind of make that change for these little ones. And then my last one I'll just pop up so that we can move on, is that 32% of children with speech, language and communication needs live in areas of high social disadvantage. So if you know anything about Fly and Start, this is why speech, language and communication is a strand of Fly and Start, and why we have the team of speech and language therapists working within Fly and Start, because we know those children are more at risk of developing those speech, language and communication needs. Okay. So just for a little bit of strategic context then, but we won't spend a long time on this because we want it to be really practical. But a lot of our work in early years speech and language is guided by the Talk With Me delivery plan. So that launched in 2020, and it's our national framework and strategy for improving everything to do with speech and language for the early years. The aims are, basically it has 5 key objectives. So raising public awareness, and we are going to hopefully have a minute or 2 at the end to just show you the Talk With Me website, which is a key part of that. But also you are a key part of it, because actually if we can be, no matter who we are, no matter what professional kind of area we're working in, if we can be embedding speech and language messages, then we can kind of spread that message, wider and further. They want to improve identification of SLC needs, and they have done a review of how we screen for speech and language difficulties, and we're waiting for a new tool for Wales next year. They've done a review of our interventions and provided some guidance on which interventions are evidence-based and which, to prioritise. Upskilling the workforce, and I can see there's quite a lot of health visitors on the call. So we did do a really big training rollout of the Talk With Me full day of training. So hopefully that's ringing bells in everybody's mind. And today will be a nice refresher of that, really. But just again, anybody can share these messages about speech and language. So we want to make as many people aware of it as possible and make sure that everybody's up to date on the evidence base. And then embedding SLC in Welsh Government policies as well. So there's been loads of work, but there's obviously so much more to do, as there always is. And although Talk With Me delivery plan is the kind of main thing that's dedicated to SLC, it also aligns with so many other strategic context pieces of documentation. So obviously within a healthier Wales, because of those long-term impacts we've just talked about, it aligns to that. SLC is dedicated, embedded within the Healthy Child Wales programme. We've recently had new screen time guidance from Welsh Government around how to kind of manage and limit children's screen time and how to make the best of it, because that is something that can appear to interrupt that, that interaction that helps with language development. Gwent being a Marmot region and kind of trying to limit those health inequalities. And again, because we know there's this gradient with kind of your social economic status and language, it's relevant to that. And also there's a really nice kind of piece of context from the Early Intervention Foundation, which is language as a child wellbeing indicator, which really kind of highlights that language development is not just about academic success and employment later and, that sort of stuff, but it's also about wellbeing. Being able to express your wants, your needs, your ideas is so fundamental. That actually it's also about that kind of wider mental health and well-being as well. So that's highlighted in that document too. Okay, so just wanted to highlight two kind of images really from the Talk With Me delivery plan, just that we want to have a graduated response to speech and language difficulties. So we have that pyramid there, and we kind of want to work from bottom to top with these children. So there's universal, population and targeted levels of things we can provide before we refer them into a specialist service, which would be our sort of an Iron Bevan speech language therapy department. But that actually so much can be done at that universal and targeted level. And you can see on the left-hand side the prevalence. We know that 10% of children will have speech and language needs that require specialist input. So that also tells us that 90% of children should be able to make nice progress if we put the right things in place in their normal kind of everyday life. And we really want to protect the specialist team to have their time to work with those 10% of children, and not be having children get to that point if they don't have to. So 90% of the time we should be able to make the difference. So we're not asking everybody to become a speech and language therapist, and we're not asking parents to become speech and language therapists. We're just trying to promote really positive environments all day, every day for these children, to kind of help them to stay at the lower end of that pyramid, as much of the time as possible. And it's not about who you are, but it's about what you do. So just a little bit of evidence here for context. Early language experience predicts developmental outcomes years later with conversational turns during the critical period of language development, being highly correlated with later language and cognitive skills, even after you adjust for social economic status. So we know that early intervention around taking turns with your child, interacting with them and having back and forth interactions just in daily life is effective for everybody, no matter who you are. So even if you are born and you are more at risk of speech and language needs because of maybe where you live, we know that we can be really effective at kind of minimizing that or reducing that if you get the right intervention early on. And then that can have this really lovely impact on your cognitive skills, your later transition into school. And lots of people call speech and language the golden thread because it kind of ties together so many other bits of development, and kind of, is so fundamental and underpin so many other cognitive skills. In particular is literacy. So later on, if we have a minute to show you the website, there is a really nice fact sheet called the Phonological Awareness Fact Sheet on the Talk With Me website, and that kind of goes into a little bit more depth around how important it is to kind of learning to talk, leading to those later literacy skills. So that's just one example of kind of how language is a prerequisite skill for those later things that we want to support children to develop. And then this is basically a slide that you may find useful to print off, have in your diary and share with families if you are probably sharing any message, but obviously in particular about speech and language. But we use this a lot with parents, and it's normally really successful as a visual to say, who can actually make the difference here? If the only time that we're promoting speech and language and using positive strategies is in that purple box, that 1 hour professional visit, that you have a week, we're not going to achieve anywhere near as much as if all day, every day, the people who are with this child are using those strategies too. Different language opportunities happen at breakfast time, at bath time, when you're in the park, when you're in the supermarket. And as professionals, we're not with families at those times. We can't make a difference to those times. But if what we can do is help parents to know and feel confident what to do in that daily life, then we can really help them to make the difference and see some positive change. So we do use this visual just to help set an expectation of we want to move away from that expert model. It doesn't have to be a speech and language therapist that supports speech and language. Who can make the difference? Who's with that child the most? Creating that communication environment that we know is so well researched to be, critical. And that's where you come in really as wider professionals. Anyone with contact with a family can promote the messages that Ellie's going to talk about. For them to use all day, every day. And I always say to families, when I come in and see you, my job is to see if what we've tried has worked, troubleshoot if it hasn't, step it up, step it down, and make sure you leave confident knowing what you can do. And you're going to be the one that's going to make the difference. It's not about what actually happens in this room when you're with me for this hour. It's not powerful enough on its own. So yeah, we're not asking anyone to become an SLT. We're not asking families to find extra time to set aside to practice communication, because actually communication happens 24/7. And if you're going to take your child to the supermarket, that time is going to pass anyway. So let's use some positive strategies. You're going to bath your child. It's going to happen anyway. Let's use some positive strategies. So just trying to kind of make tweaks to those interactions that will already be happening to really maximize those everyday interactions. And that is often powerful enough to shift some of these children. But what messages are we going to actually give parents to do this? That's something that Ellie is now going to take you through for the second half of the webinar.
Oh, thank you, Emily. Yeah, so we've got the Talk With Me 10 tips to help our children and the children that we're working with and the families that we're working with learn to talk. So I'm going to talk you through the 10 tips now. And like Emily has said, these are not meant to make anybody's life harder. If anything, they're meant to be integrated into what they're already doing on a daily basis. And also what is brilliant about these tips is that we're hoping to promote them to families, for families to use, but also us as professionals can be using a lot of these tips as well in our times that we're meeting children and that we're working with the children that we see in our professions. So first tip is start talking to me before I am born. So talking to that bump, singing to that bump, reading stories to that bump. Communication, interaction, language development can really start from the beginning of when we're in the womb and when we can hear mum's voice, dad's voice, carer's voice, whoever it might be that is around us. So that first tip really does start from right at the beginning. Tip 2 is I can learn our language and culture from you, which is really encouraging our families that are bilingual, multilingual, that to use their mother tongue at home and to use the language that is most, what obviously important to them, but also that they are most comfortable with at home, and to share their culture with their children to help them learn about not only themselves, but also the world around them. Tip 3 is our best place is face to face. That might be down on the floor together. That might be, sat in a high chair and then in a adult chair across from each other. It might be sat at a little table together. Whatever it might be, being face to face is the best place to be. Not only so that they can see our faces, they can see how speech sounds are made and how our mouth moves, but also so that you can see what they're interested in, what they're looking at, what they're trying to tell you. Not always are they telling you things with their words. They might be telling you things with their eyes or their facial expression. If you're face to face, you can see those things a lot easier. Tip 4 is sing me a rhyme at any time. I think one of the biggest skills of speech and language therapists is we can make a song about absolutely anything. And like Emily said, you can use this at any time in the day. So whether it's bath time, dinner time, tidy up time. Recently, I've seen a lovely video online of a little girl, she spills some milk and mum makes up a song about spilling the milk and that it's okay to make mistakes. Rhymes and songs are absolutely really powerful and really lovely to use in your everyday. Number 5, let's talk and play every day. That one speaks for itself. Number 6, let's look at books together. And what's important to realize there is it says look. It doesn't say read books. It says look at books together. Because it doesn't always mean reading. It could be looking at the pictures. It could be the feely books. There are going to be families that you come into contact with where literacy isn't a strength of theirs or literacy is a barrier for them. So we want to be able to encourage all families to be able to access books and to access the world of books, even if that means just looking at the pictures. Number 7, talk with me about what we can see. Again, that can be absolutely anything. That can be super, super interesting things like what you can see in the park or what you can see at the fun fair, or it could be narrating that you're washing the dishes, or if you're their dentist, narrating what you're doing while you're giving them their procedure. You can just narrate all day to give them that lovely exposure to language. Number 8, now obviously a real hot topic at the moment, is turning screen time into you and me time. Again, important to realise there that we're not saying no screens whatsoever. What we're saying is, how do we use screen times to encourage interaction, and how do we use screen time to still get that back and forth. Number 9, adding a word to what you have heard them say. And then number 10, I love to talk with everyone, giving children lots and lots and lots of opportunities to have interaction and communication with lots of different people. And what's really important to remember here is that all of these strategies, all of these tips are based in evidence, and we've got a really lovely booklet on the Talk With Me website that has got all that evidence in. And something that Talk With Me focus on a lot is that the tips are scientific, but also really specific. So they're really, really easy to integrate into their everyday interactions. And the overarching goal of these messages is to help parents be responsive, let the child lead, model language, and have balanced back and forth interactions. And those quotes on the side there really encompass that. I can see Errol's put something in the chat. Errol said, songs that incorporate the child's name and rhyme work well, pausing them to allow them to finish the line. Yeah, perfect, Errol. Thank you very much, Errol. So those are our lovely Talk With Me 10 tips. And what we wanted to do now is show you this in practice. We wanted you to see a adult-child interaction in real life and see if you could see these tips in play. So we're going to show you a video now of a local dad who is interacting with his little boy, and it's a really lovely interaction, very, very typical of what we would see in everyday interactions with dads and their sons. And what I want you to do is have a bit of a watch and think, what top tips, what of the 10 tips can you see in this video? Put it in the chat, have a think, and yeah, have a bit of a watch. We want to be looking out for that responsiveness and thinking about how much is dad responding to the child's gestures, verbalizations, either verbally or non-verbally, and how much time does dad spend following the child's interest, that rather than in redirecting them, sorry. So have a bit of a watch and we'll see what you all think. It's trying.
I'll quickly refresh, Ellie. Maybe I did say my laptop was on the struggle bus
You
this
did,
morning.
you did.
It does seem to be. Right, okay, hopefully this works.
Here we go.
There you go.
One squirrel. Two squirrel. One squirrel. Two squirrel. A flower. Go to the next page. Good boy. Ready. Peekaboo, ladybird. Peekaboo, owls.
Apples.
There are apples, yeah. Apples on the tree. Bye-bye, ladybird. Next page. Oh, we go here.
Is it possible to increase the volume just slightly?
Could you hear it at all? Because we're going to replay it in a minute, Errol. So I'll work on the volume whilst Ellie does a little bit of wrap up of that watch. But just for time, do you want to carry on,
We
Ellie, and I'll look at the volume?
we
Yeah, no
could
problem.
hear it. It was just quite quiet.
Just quiet. Sorry about that. It might just be the actual video, but I'll have a look at it now.
Brill, I can see some of you putting in the chat some of the talk with me top tips that you can see happening in that video. Like I said, really, really lovely video and a really, really lovely interaction. That isn't a speech and language therapist. That is just, like I say, local, normal dad. And yeah, brill. So I can see Emma said extending the child's following the child's lead on the floor with the child. Katie said adding words. Bethany said being face to face. Katie said sharing a book. Yeah, lovely. And what you can see is that was a 1 minute video, and look at all those lovely tips in there already. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch that video again. Yeah, Nicola said labeling, really lovely. Brill. So what we're going to do is we are going to watch the video again, and there are going to be speech bubbles popping up as we watch the video. The blue bubbles are environmental things that the dad is doing. And then the yellow bubble are the language that he's used. And that's going to really highlight to us all these lovely strategies that are being used. Like I said, this is a really, really short video. And still we can see all these different lovely things that are happening in that video. Brill.
I have put the volume as far up as possible. I don't think it's going to be much better. It might just be a quiet video. So hopefully you can hear it enough, but I have maxed it out.
Brill, thanks, Emily. Lovely. So what you can see there are lots and lots of real positives there. And, you know, that video is a beautiful example of interaction. But there were things in there that maybe that we could have picked on. But what we've noticed is that all we are talking about is the positives. All we are talking about is all the lovely things that that dad is doing. Because the more we compliment, the more that we promote positive strategies and positive interactions, the less time that families have to not only think about maybe the things that they're doing that aren't working, but also the less time they have to do those things because they're focusing on, oh, when I labelled, Emily said or Ellie said that was really brilliant, so I'm going to carry on doing that. And I saw that my little one reacted really positively to that. So we really, really work on empowering our parents and empowering our families and the professionals that we work with as well in early years and in our core service, to show them all the positive strategies that they can be using to promote language development and interaction with little ones. So yeah, really, really lovely. And like I've said, we've not focused there on things that we shouldn't be doing, but we do also like to give you some information on that as well. So what we're going to think about now is, what don't we want to reinforce? So first things first is asking a child lots of questions. As you can see from the previous video, that didn't happen. And the reason being is because questions are conversation stoppers. And if what we want to do is not stop the conversation, we want to keep the conversation going. We want that lovely back and forth. And what we want to think about is, when you, and I always use this example, when you see a little one with a really big ice cream outside the ice cream shop, what is it that we typically say to them? We typically say, oh, what have you got? And there's two things that are happening here. Either that child knows exactly what they've got, and you're not adding anything new to this conversation, and you're not adding anything new to their language, or they don't know the answer, so they can't answer you, and they don't know the word, so they can't answer you. So actually, what we need to be doing is, if we think they know the answer, if we think they know the word ice cream, we can say, wow, look at that big ice cream. That's huge. It's got lots of sprinkles on the top, giving them that language that is maybe new and exciting for them. If they don't know the answer, then we want to model that language to them. Wow, look at your ice cream. That looks yummy. Giving them the language that they need instead of using questions. And that's not to say that questions are always a no, and questions do have their place in back and forth conversation, of course, but it's just thinking about the child that is in front of you. And what we tend to say is that for every one question that we use, try to use 4 comments afterwards, and remember in your hand as the reminder of that. And what we want is to only really encourage questions that need an answer. So for example, do you want an apple or a strawberry? Do you want to play inside or outside? Do you want to play with the cars or with Spider-Man? They need to make a choice there, so they're able to then use that question appropriately. Next up, which again is something that we often see families and sometimes professionals focusing on, is modeling complex concepts such as colours, letters, shapes, and numbers. And these are really, really hard. They're really, really hard concepts that are abstract. And what we want to do instead is model functional and meaningful language. Because if a child came up to you and said, red, you would think, red what? Red dog, red book, red coat. I don't know what you're asking for. But if they came up to you and said apple, you know exactly what they want, and then they can make a choice of a red or a green apple if you've got the luxury of the two. So what we want to do is we want to focus on modeling and encouraging that really, really functional language. And what our hope is that we focus on the quality of language and taking turns in the interaction rather than the quantity. So the sentences that we use often build with who and what doing. So maybe first daddy or mummy or nanny, and then it might be mummy eating, daddy eating, etc. And what we often do as adults is we miss modeling those action words: eating, jumping, sleeping, crying. So focusing on encouraging caregivers, encouraging professionals to model what is happening in the day, what you are doing throughout the day, will be a really, really good reminder of getting those action words in there. But as a reminder, and this is really, really important to us, is that we don't want to criticize or find the bad, but being aware of it means that we can try and reduce it by really, really complimenting the good. So for example, if a parent asks lots of questions, wait for a time that they make a comment, and then you can really enforce that. So that is our hope, and that is why we've pulled forward this, what we don't want to reinforce today. Bro. So next up, we have got our Gwent pathways. And like Emily said at the beginning, we probably could have done a whole webinar just talking about this because there are lots of information here. But what we wanted to do today is really emphasize that all areas have a local pathway that fits with their own systems and their own services. So some have combined teams that run interventions around parenting as well as language, and some have dedicated early language support teams. And they're really highly trained, really passionate teams that are supported by yes, Errol, no problem at all. We will share the pathways, and like I say, we've got the contact details on there as well. But they're supported by the local speech and language therapists who work closely in these teams, and we've got all their names there. I work in Caerphilly and I also work in Torfaen. So I am the person for those places. But like I say, all the other therapists are on there too, and we'll always welcome communication from all professionals, because our aim is to really get these messages across and support in these early years. So what you will see is that, and what we know from the Welsh Government, is that it's a requirement within Flying Start guidance to have an SLT in Flying Start teams who will be able to shape and develop interventions, track outcomes, and also then provide clinical advice to colleagues. And there's a real mix across the different local authorities of group and one-to-one offers, and each area has different referral routes. So there was no way that we could go through all of that today. But like I've said, we're more than happy to share any information that you need for your local areas, or all of the areas, whatever works best and is most appropriate for you. And it can really vary as well with the service, depending on if the child is Flying Start or not. So lots and lots of differences, but also very accessible if you need them. So there are the contact details on the screen. Emily and I are more than happy, to share any information, but there is also other sources. So your local health visitors, the Family Information Service can also provide you with copies of local areas pathways as well. And what I'm going to show you now on the next slide is some examples of interventions that you may recognise in your local areas. So very similar to the triangle that you saw at the beginning of the presentation today with Emily. But in an Iron Bevan, this is an Iron Bevan specific, children usually need to have access something targeted, so that yellowy orange box, before being accepted to specialist services, unless the concerns are specific to their speech sounds, the way that they say words. So most areas have similar offers with different names, e.g. targeted groups, such as Chatty Children in Newport, Chatty Chimps in Monmouth, Talking Together in Torfaen, and Talking Tots in Blaenau Gwent. These are all group-based on the key messages and the key strategies as well. And they've all got a really similar structure, but are just maybe run a little bit differently in the different areas. This is really not an exhaustive list of the pathway, because they are continuously changing and evolving depending on the need. Like Errol said, the profile of children, the lay of the land has really changed quite drastically. So we do need to evolve, and we do need to alter things as we move. So like we say, this isn't exhaustive, but we can share local pathways if that would be helpful to people. And what we know is that the ages and stages here link to help on the link here, can help you understand the norms and when to be worried. So that link on the screen there, and we can show you that as well on the Talk website, can really help you understand when to be worried and when and what concerns you might have with children. Right, I need to hurry up, sorry. So last but not least, before we show you a really lovely video, is the Talk With Me Phase 2 consultation. So this launched in January in 2026, this year, and the proposal is to expand support for children up to the age of 11. The objectives of the consultation are on the screen here. What our hope is, and the reason that we're raising this with you today, is that we'd really, really love as many responses as possible. The closing date is next Thursday, the 30th of April. The link is on the screen there. This is all going to be shared with you, and we can share the link again with you guys. But please contribute to the consultation. Like Errol said at the beginning, you guys are all on the ground. You guys are all working with the families, with the children that this will be relevant for. So your input is going to be so important and so helpful. So yeah, thank you in advance if you do fill that in. Okay, some of you might have seen this before, some of you might have not, but we absolutely love this video. And Molly Wright, who is the 7-year-old, she's definitely not 7 anymore, but the 7-year-old in this video really summarizes everything that we are trying to get across today in a really, really lovely way. So we wanted to show you this video before we finished up for today. So Emily's gonna... Is that playing for everyone? Because it says content has been blocked for me.
Is it working, Ellie?
No.
It is.
Oh, it is for Errol.
It
Oh, everyone-
started to, but it has now stopped.
I paused it. Right, I'll play it. Any problems, put it in the chat because I've got it all open on another window.
I
as a
think that
backup.
what is happening here is those that are in an Iron Bevan, they
I can
can't see it because it's being blocked by the health board.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
but then
that's
it's
fine.
working for Laura, so maybe that's
I'll
not
share.
good.
I'll just share it on. I got it up as a backup. I must have had a premonition that this may happen. So give me 1 second.
Thanks, Emily.
No, absolutely fine. Let me go off this now. Okay, I can't see anyone now, Ellie. So if you could just shout at me if there's any problems. Oh, and it's
Of
gone off my
course.
tab. Oh dear. Right, TED Talk.
It's worth the wait. It's fine.
Okay,
Here you go.
sound.
No sound. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
No sound.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's up there. Can you turn it up from your YouTube sound menu, please? Thank you.
What if I was to tell you that a game of peekaboo could change the world? Sounds impossible, right? Well, I'm here today to prove it's not. Hi, I'm Molly, and I'm 7, and this is my little friend Ari. Say hi, Ari. Hi. Oh, and this is my neighbor, Amajot. He has to take Ari away now to get ready for our experiment. But don't worry, they'll be back. My talk today is about some powerful things you grown-ups can do that shape us as children and the adults we become. How do I know? Because my parents and people around me did them, early and often. I know not all kids are as lucky. Some of my friends, some kids at my school, and many around the world. And I would really like to help change that. Thanks to scientists, we now know just how important the first 5 years are for our health and development, especially our brains. Ari started learning long before he was even born, from inside his mummy's tummy. When Ari was born, he was tiny, and he cried all the time. He was always hungry, and he pooped a lot. Now, he laughs and giggles and makes funny noises. But those are just the changes we hear and see. There's way more going on inside. So, let's talk more about our brains. The blue bag is the rough size and weight of a healthy baby's brain at birth. The red one is a baby's brain after the first year. It almost doubles in volume. And by my age, it's almost 90% the volume of an adult brain. Our brains develop faster in our early years than at any other time in our lives. It can create up to 1 million neural connections every second. But we need your help. Our healthy development depends on these top 5 things. 1. Connecting. 2. Talking. 3. Playing. 4. A healthy home. 5. Community. All of this helps our brains and us reach our full potential. So what's something you can do that can really make a difference? Scientists call it serve and return. That's just a grown-up way of saying connect, talk, and play with us. And here's the really big news. Amajot, Ari, you ready?
Ready?
Copycat games build imagination and empathy.
And
Naming games build vocabulary and attention.
is it Daddy? Ari! Daddy? Ari!
And games like Peekaboo, yep, Peekaboo, actually build memory and trust. Each time you talk to us, play with us, make us laugh, it not only builds and strengthens our relationships and mental health, it actually teaches us some of the most important life skills. From making friends, to taking a test, to getting a job, to one day maybe even starting a family of our own. Interactions early and often matter. Take it from me, the 7-year-old up here, talking about brain science. Okay, now, let's see what happens when the connection is taken away. So now he's trying to get his dad's attention again. He's reaching out like, that was fun, why have you stopped? I know it's important for adults to use their devices sometimes, but kids are hardwired to seek out meaningful connections. Not receiving them causes confusion and stress. Okay, Amajot, please re-engage.
That is Ari! Okay.
Now, what if a whole childhood was like that last 30 seconds? How hard it would be for a child to feel calm, to feel safe, to learn to trust anyone, and the lifelong impact that would have. That makes me feel sad. Ari only reacted the way he did and recovered so quickly because the connection between him and his dad is usually so strong. The positive relationships with the grown-ups in our lives gives kids the confidence we need to try new things, to explore, and be a kid. So please try and remember, the most special period for our development is the first 5 years, starting from inside Mummy's tummy. What's something really impactful you can do? Serve and return. And when? Early and often. Please give it up for Amajot and Ari.
Lovely. So I think you can all agree that Molly is absolutely amazing for so many reasons, but also that really summarizes everything that we are trying to get across today in a really, really concise way, and also a really, really powerful way. I feel like a 7-year-old telling you is maybe, yeah, really, really amazing. No problem, Gemma. That always has a really positive response, and we absolutely love that video. So last but not least, trying to wrap up now as quickly as possible because I know we're running out of time. But we've got some signposting here for you. The link that we wanted to signpost you to, really, really importantly, is that top one, the Talk With Me website. Really, really encourage everyone to have a look at it. It's got so many really, really helpful resources on there. Emily's going to get it up now to show you briefly, and also not only really, really powerful things to share with families, but also really, really powerful things for your own learning as well. Yeah, really, really accessible and lovely resources on there, as well as we've also got on our signposting page is the sign along, the Alclan short course, the CBeebies parenting website, which used to be Tiny Happy People, which has come up there now, and the Exchange Community of Practice webinars too. And we've also signposted you to some local initiatives too on that slide for each of the local authorities. So hopefully you can have a good look at that when we send the slides out for you all. Well,
Do you want me to I'll pop that slide up just so everyone can scan through it. But yeah, we don't have time to go over the local initiatives, but we can talk about them if people obviously want to.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly pop it on for 2 seconds. And then and that's it then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellie and Emily. If we were in a room, this is where you'd get a huge round of applause for both of you. So, I mean, you've covered such a lot of ground there in a very short space of time. You've reminded us of the importance of the environment and those interactions and how they support and contribute to speech, language and communication. You've given practical tips about how practitioners can support that. And you've talked about how we're organised in Gwent, and you've even managed to find the time to talk about the Talk With Me Phase 2 consultation. And I know Nisha is coordinating a Best Start in Life region response to that. So please, if anybody's interested in contributing to that, get in touch with Nisha. And then you finished with that lovely video of Molly, which I have seen a number of times, and I really like the way in which it brings together speech, language and communication with the other aspects of development, the emotional and the social aspects of development, the importance of those positive relationships. And I always feel slightly uncomfortable when we just focus in isolation on one aspect of development, but of course for the purposes of a short webinar we need to. But I think that video exemplified how it all comes together really from the perspective of a baby and an infant. So really, really good choice of video to end on. And I think there is absolutely something about seeing what this looks like in reality and reminding us about what it is from the perspective of the baby, the child and the carer. So we are out of time now. We've got two more minutes to go. So what I would say is if anybody has any questions, if this is okay, Emily and Ellie, I'll ask people to put them in the chat bar and then we'll get back to them separately rather than maybe opening it up for discussion at this point, because we are near the end of our allotted time. I just want to say thank you to everybody that took time out of their busy diaries to come along and join this webinar today. We do appreciate your support and your interest in this. Nisha's just popped up on the screen then some promotion for our next webinar, which is on the 10th of June, and that's focusing on attachments with babies and young children. So please do promote that. So I think that just leaves me to say one final thank you to Emily and to Ellie for today's great presentations. Thanks as ever to Nisha for organising us and for organising this, and please do provide us with some feedback. We genuinely want to hear how useful you're finding these webinars, so please do be honest. Here's the screen for the evaluation form. It just takes 1 minute to complete it, so really welcome your feedback on how we can improve these sessions. So it's 11 o'clock, bang on time, so I'm going to say please do have a good rest of the day. Thanks ever so much. Bye bye all.
Thank you.